The Eurozone's economy has expanded at its slowest pace in 4 years. The latest figures from Eurostat reveal GDP growth across the 19 countries was cut in half in the third quarter. That's mainly due to new emissions standards that hit German car production, as well as stagnation in Italy, the bloc's third largest economy. Economic growth in the Eurozone slowed to 0.2% in the third quarter, compared to 0.4% in the previous 3 months. Economists had expected that number to hold steady. Italy's economic growth ground to a halt. That's due to lower domestic demand and a row with the European Union over higher spending in the country's budget plans next year. Separately, the European Commission said economic confidence among business owners and consumers dropped for a 10th consecutive month by more than what was expected. And Claus Vistesen joins me now from Newcastle in the UK. He's the Chief Eurozone Economist at Pantheo Macroeconomics. Welcome to the program. So we're seeing some disappointing growth figures out of the Eurozone. Can you tell us a bit more about what's behind those figures?
Well, I think, you did it very well in your introduction. I think that part of this was the EU emissions tests, and that stung German growth, so that was expected. So, I mean, I know that the consensus was for an unchanged growth rate, but that was always very odd to me. I think the true consensus was probably that the growth slowed a little bit in the third quarter, but probably that it'll pick up again in the fourth quarter. But the general story is that growth in the Eurozone has slowed quite significantly from last year. I don't think it'll slow much further, but it's possible that it slows a little bit further into the first half of next year. And in some sense, we're returning to a more pedestrian and normal pace in the Eurozone.
So you don't think it's a sign of a more sustained slowdown across the Eurozone?
No, because I think we already have had a sustained slowdown in the Eurozone. That started in the beginning of the year, so in some sense this is already going on. I think in terms of the German numbers, which we didn't get today, but we have to back him out of the original data, they were really poor. I think they'll come back a little bit in the fourth quarter. So I think in some sense 0.3%, 0.4%, going back to the numbers you mentioned, is probably a fair shout in terms of where the Eurozone is at the moment.
We know that US President Donald Trump and the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker a few months ago managed to stave off a full-blown trade war between the two economies. I'm wondering though, how are global trade tensions affecting the Eurozone economy?
Oh, that's a net negative, and that's added to the slowdown this year. I mean, the Eurozone is the most open of the major global economic regions. So when you have trade tension and when you have slowdowns in emerging markets, such as we've seen this year, that hits growth in the Eurozone very hard, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen manufacturing slow quite a lot. But the domestic economy is still all right. So in some sense, if the Eurozone was very strong a year ago because the global economy was strong, part of the slowdown we're seeing in the Eurozone now is also reflecting the fact that you have these trade tensions. And I mean, a final point, if Trump goes ahead with the 25% plus 267 billion at the start of the year, that would be catastrophic. I think that would be a really bad move, both for the Eurozone economy, but also for financial markets.
Interesting. And we also know that the European Central Bank is planning to scale back some of the stimulus that it's provided since 2014. In light of these sluggish growth figures for the Eurozone, do you think the ECB should hold off on those plans?
That's difficult for the ECB because we also got data today from Germany showing that inflation is going up, right? And this is perfectly normal as the economic cycle matures. Growth can actually slow a little bit even as inflation picks up. And this is a dilemma for the ECB. If you just look at the inflation data, which is what the ECB is supposed to look at, they shouldn't. They should go ahead. And this is tricky for the ECB because obviously they also want to preserve the recovery. But for now, I think they'll go ahead.
Okay, we'll see what Mario Draghi has to say. Claus Vistesen in Newcastle, thank you so much.